And I serve as the Executive Director of CASDA, California School Development Association in Albany. Dr. Jerry Steele works with us, and actually many of the workshops that you'll attend this morning are presented by CASDA faculty. CASDA is the field arm of the School of Education at the University of Albany. It's something called the School Studies Council, which is we assist professors and the others in the School of Education to bring research and practice. We also help professors connect with the field, so it goes both ways. We're a really old organization. We've been around since 1949, and we work in 110 school systems. It has been our privilege to work with OCs and with board districts, the 7 districts in this consortium, to help. Our job is to facilitate, bring some expertise. We're simply helpers and assistants as we go through these things. So it's really great to be here. This is a really, you find this, I think you made a really good selection this morning. You're gonna go through a lot of subject workshops, technical workshops about what you do every day. But the thing you don't get an opportunity to do all that often is to really listen to leaders who have to interact with the state, federal government, with the public, with boards of education, to try to understand, what's going on out there. And so this helps you provide a little bit, answer some of those questions. So on our panel today, I'll let them introduce themselves, and then I get to toss some questions at them and see how they react. So, Hidden, you want to start? Judy, you want to start? Just
sure, I can.
Just name and role.
Okay. Good morning, I'm Dr. Kitty Summers. I'm the Assistant Superintendent at Hudson Falls, and also Director of Special Ed, and any other jobs that's assigned by the Superintendent. I'm happy to say I know Dr. Butterworth quite well. He sat on my doctoral dissertation. He was my chair, so he's very dear.
You're so nice to me, even though you don't have to.
Andy Cook. I'm the Superintendent of Schools for the Hartford Central School District.
And I'm Vincent Maney from Cambridge.
So we're going to run this panel each of the 3 times, and each of the superintendents who are part of this collaborative will get their turn here on the panel. So I thought this would be an interesting way to do it. We'll rotate this. So what we'll do is I'll toss a question. Everybody will answer it, but they'll each get the chance to take first crack at one. So Vince, I'm going to start with this. I think people might be interested in this. Tell us a little bit about your district. And secondly, tell us a little bit about your career, how you wound up there.
The district and my career path have 3 times when we crossed, but I was a business teacher and started out outside of actually south of Utica, then went to Whitesboro, which was just between Utica and Rome, and had trouble in education and never thought I'd get back into it. And I was visiting friends, and Cambridge had an opening. So I applied for it. It was October, actually. I applied for it, got the job, and I felt like I died and went to heaven. They actually, this was 1981, 82. They actually cared about the kids and did everything they could to get whatever to get through. I spent a year there, and the gentleman tried to come back. He had a brain tumor, tried to come back, and I went and got my master's in business, and he couldn't finish the year, so they called me and asked me if I was interested, and I went back for a second time and was there for 12 years as a business teacher. Left there and went to be an assistant principal at Johnstown. Then I came here to Hudson Falls as an assistant principal at the high school. I was a business manager here for 8 years and went to Cambridge for the 3rd time in 2009. And that's my career path. Been through some very interesting boards over the last couple of years, but it seems to be, again, back to what I said when I first felt in 1981 that they were involved in concern with the students. These 5 people are very academically oriented and very supportive of what we're trying to do from a teaching standpoint. A little bit about the district. They are usually a pretty good performing school within the Albany Business Review. I think the lowest they've been in the last 8 years was 15 until this year. And I say that until this year, we dropped to 33. And that was as a result that we can trace everything back to the GPA. In 2009-10, we had 198 staff members. We got as low as 167 staff members. We're back up to 175, but we are still down 23 teachers from 2009. We're missing 11 at the elementary and 12 at the secondary from when I started. It's been a disaster, and the GEA, when they took the money away from us, they took it away based on wealth. Cambridge has always been a 0.53, 0.54 combined wealth ratio. All of a sudden, the assessors did not do their job, and when they didn't do their job, the equalization rates dropped. Anybody that's the math department knows that if your equalization drops, there's an inverse relationship to your assessed valuations. So our combined wealth ratio in 3 years went from a 0.54 to a 0.79. So they took money away from Cambridge at a much larger rate than everybody else. In the 2010-11 school year, I lost 35.4 people. In the 2012-13 school year, I lost another 12. We have been able to add people back a little at a time. The consortium got the STLE 3 grant. We were not eligible for that because we were lucky enough to have one of my English teachers right before the STLE 1 grant and the STLE 2 grant. We got both of them, about $115,000 each. And what we've done with that money is to sink it into professional development. I'm a firm believer that if we hire the best people possible and continue to throw professional development at everybody, all we can continue to do is polish that gemstone. And the kids are the only ones that are going to benefit by having the best people in front of them.
We'll pick up, actually, some of the things that Vince was talking about, we'll elaborate on a little bit further, a little bit later. Andy, tell us about your district and how you wound up there.
I've had a much shorter career path.
Sorry.
Actually, Mr. Canini was in Hudson Falls when I graduated here. I won't tell you where I was in 1981. But I taught 4 years of high school social studies in the Whitehall Central School District. And then I became the middle school, high school principal for the Hartford Central School District in 2007. And I held that role for approximately 5.5 years. And coming up on 2 years, I've been the superintendent for Hartford. We have a small school, although within the past few months it's growing quite a bit. We've experienced a large growth, comparatively speaking, over the past 8 years. We're a single building, and one of the nice things that whenever I interview candidates for teaching positions in the school district that I always comment on is that one of the nicest parts about our district is that we're truly a district with everybody working together. We do have a couple of departments that aren't very strong, like the social studies department. The entire department is here.
I'm going, what are you saying? He's lying.
But we truly, we're not departmentalized in any sense of the word. Our faculty really works well together across grade levels and across disciplines and really works to the betterment of the students.
Thanks, Andy. So, Kitty, a little bit about Hudson Falls and how you came to be here.
My pathway was a little bit different. I have a degree in business, but I became a management consultant, and I worked for the state of Illinois and had an office in Chicago and Springfield, so really had the opportunity to be involved at a high level with business. So I did that for about 8 years, and then I went into teaching. I got a degree from St. Rose for elementary ed, and started my teaching career in the Albany City School District. I started in Arbor Hill, which is an interesting place because it's an open concept, and it's a beautiful place, and there's 900 plus students there, 99% minority, 99% free reduced lunch, and it was a fabulous community. We became a community school, and being part of a big district, you have lots of opportunity to do many things. So I got very involved in systematic planning, looking at where we need to improve, school improvement. Once we became a community school in Arbor Hill, I then, in addition to being a teacher, I became the after-school curriculum coordinator and the summer school curriculum coordinator. I was able to design a multi-age, arts-infused summer school for their first elementary summer school, and it worked great for kids, and that's what we were all about. That's all you are. From there, I did get an administrative degree, and my first principal job was at Harmony Hill, which is in Cahoes, beautiful K-5 building, and it was a great place to learn. We were able to get involved with the School of Education out of Harvard through Project Zero. I was able to attend Project Zero there. And then we brought that back to the school, and we were able to get a professor from Harvard come in and work with our teachers as a facilitator and really develop very strong professional learning communities, which helped us support student achievement. We were recognized as a gap closing school for 5 years in a row. Just wonderful experience. And then I went on to get my doctorate at Sage College in cohort 1, which was a unique experience. There were 9 superintendents and 9 administrators in that program. So there was a lot of cross conversations about not only at a building level, but at a district level. It really shifts how you think about teaching and learning. So from there, I worked at East Greenbush for a little while as an assistant superintendent, and then I came up here to Hudson Falls, which has been a fabulous experience. I've been here starting my 4th year. And the great thing about this district is how well we can have discussions and work together to support the whole child. This district is very much about not only the academic side, but also the emotional and social side of children. So that has worked out well there.
Right, it's very interesting. Well, let's consider this. Andy, first question for you. Everybody gets the same one. For the last 3.5, 4 years, every district in New York has been absorbing the mandates related to that really came from the Race to the Top program, the annual professional performance review, more recently the Common Core Learning Standards, requirements related to data-driven instruction. Tell us a little bit about how Hartford has been what's the implementation of the Race to the Top programs been like in Hartford?
I'm sure it's not unique to Hartford, but it's certainly been a challenge. And I think that if you broke down any of the individual initiatives within Race to the Top, any single one of them would have been a gigantic undertaking in and of itself. But then when you combine them all together, and we're doing the revised APPR, we're doing the revised assessments, we're implementing the Common Core Learning Standards all at the same time, it was very difficult to try and balance out all the new initiatives that were forced on us while still trying to achieve our goal of educating students. I think finally, within Hartford, we have a good plan in place. Not that we had bad plans in place before, but I think we finally fully understand what our plan is. We really started working well with the Common Core Learning Standards. We're still really working on the assessments, but I think our biggest challenge with it, like I said, is just the amount at the same time coming through, and the challenge of both the administrators building-wide and the teachers trying to juggle them all and keep them separate as well. Because it was very hard, and even today, parents still can't separate the Common Core Learning Standards from the APPR movement, from the 338 assessments, and it's all one jumbled mess.
So, Kitty, here at Hudson Falls, implementation of Race to the Top, you're sensitive, your views?
like Andy said, it was a lot to take on all at once and have people understand that they were very much integrated. There's no way to separate these initiatives. They're all bound together. Whether it's in 3rd grade testing or shifts to the Common Core, teaching and learning for students, and then to have so much put on all at once. I think that here at Hudson Falls, we really have taken a very logical approach to programming to meet the standards. We looked at research-based programming. We did not adopt the modules at the elementary level. So we'll see how that works with other districts that did. Because I really felt that they had not been teacher tested or student tested. So validity to them, I had some question about, and that's from my professional lens. So we really looked at making consistent practice across our buildings, because we do have 5 buildings. Our students make a lot of transitions, so we needed to make sure the programming the teacher taught and the expectations were very consistent across the board. So we adopted a K through 8 math program. We looked at adopted Reader's Workshop, Writer's Workshop for our literacy programming. We do have, we did start with formative assessments, and then we went to benchmark assessments, and we are trying to fine tune that, because that does take a lot of work to see if it really truly reflects what students learn. And with APPR, we did go with a 3-year plan. So we've not had to change our APPR. We will have to at the end of this year, but that is a lot to undertake. Just even understanding how that portal reflects your agreement, that reflects what happens in the field, that reflects the outcome. So it's been a challenge.
Tell us about implementation of the race at Cambridge.
Well, we used the modules as guidelines. We felt very similar to Kitty without having something proven. We wanted to make sure that everybody felt comfortable with it. A lot of our professional development money, because we got crunched so bad with the budgets, has come from the SCLE money. We've done the cognitive coaching and everything that we possibly could with the data-driven instruction and all that. But I would have to say it focuses basically on what's being done at BOCES as well. And we've worked very closely with whatever the training has been at that level. We tried to maximize everything. And I think that money is very important to us because we got hit so hard, but we've been able to leverage it and be able to do what we can because of what we've been able to do with the grant.
So here we have a situation where we have a lot of relatively new state requirements and mandates that are being implemented at a time when, as Vince has been explaining, funding has been flat or declining. It's quite a challenge. So let's talk about the money part of this. Let's start this. So let's start with Kitty, and we'll go to Vince and we'll go to Andy. Tell us a little bit about your perspectives on school funding related to first state aid and what's happened in your district, and second of all, really what's been going on probably locally in terms of, because there are really 3 sources of funding, in the school district budget. There's a small amount that comes directly from the federal government in the title programs. The other 2, the lion's share, come either from state aid or from local property tax. And so both of those variables are really important. So what's been happening to state funding, and what's been happening locally?
This state funding, we certainly got hit, not as far as Cambridge got hit. We are a high needs district. Very little of our budget comes from the tax base. And she could probably talk about Hudson Falls much better than I, since you were the business manager. But so jump in if you see something. I would say, from my lens as the assistant superintendent, my role is to support teachers in professional development. So we did go after a number of grants. We did receive the 21st Century Grant, which really helps support our family and parent engagement. Our Title grants have declined over the years, and they're not at the level that they used to be. Certainly, our state aid has declined, and we have teachers have retired, and we have not replaced teachers. So last year, we were able to start to bring some teachers back, and that has hurt our class sizes, our teacher-student ratio. There's affects teaching and learning. We did get the SDLE grant, which has been helpful for this year, certainly helps support today. All our professional development dollars, we are a focus district, so we do get school improvement grants, and we have utilized all those dollars, which last year was $130,000, and we have focused on improving the teaching strategies and any professional development. It's everything has to be so integrated and focused. When you think about bringing on any new programs or professional development, it really has to have an outcome that is directly tied to student achievement. So,
when I was a business manager here, we were riding the wave pretty good. And what I saw at the time, or what I learned when I was first a business manager, even before it got bad, was you got to chase the revenue. So you look for where the state's going to give you the money. And we were getting 94.8 cents back on every dollar that was spent in building aid. So we went crazy. I mean, I did everything I possibly could here to generate revenue. And it saved us a boatload of money. I mean, you might have read some of the papers where Hudson Falls was dinged for having too much in revenues or reserves. But I think that's what's helped you guys survive the storm. So.
and I would say hats off to Mr. Doody, who was very
Oh, yeah.
frugal, and very focused on what's happening at the state aid, and is, that regionally there's a lot of discussions about how to support increased student state aid to all the districts in this area. So, and I think that collaboration has certainly formed an alliance that is very strong and is listened to.
So it's about Cambridge. A little bit about your perspective on state and local funding. You mentioned you alluded to it before.
Back to the same thing when I was here with doing the building projects. I lucked out when I got to Cambridge that they still hadn't done their Excel project. If anybody remembers what the Excel project was, it was supposed to pay for the local sheriff's money project that you did, you got 100% back on the dollar. So I was able to leverage our technology and put in a infrastructure that's probably second to Cambridge. I mean, theirs is Hudson Falls, they're absolutely fantastic here, but with everything that was coming down from the state, with the testing, you're going to have a computer for every kid, you had to have a robust infrastructure. So we pushed that, and on the heels of that project, I pushed another project. And people thought I was crazy when I'm laying off 35 people going out and doing a building project, but the building project, and I can show you on paper how it will save districts, and that's probably the thing that was allowing us to keep our head above water. Now, I took some of the money that we got back from the Excel project, and I bought smart boards, which I bought them through BOCES, and we got 60-some% back. The next year, I took that 60%, spent $70,000, so I got $42,000 the next year. I took that $42,000 and again, spent it in BOCES for more equipment. Since I was losing staff, I wanted to have the best equipment possible, so I needed staff to deliver the product the best to the students. So we kept turning it over like that. We still were lucky to get the community to support probably some of the highest tax rate increases in the area. And I pushed and beat up Betty a little bit that she wouldn't even talk to me anymore, but she gave us $100,000 when we were cutting half of our sports. So we were able to restore sports. And then last year when we did the distance learning rooms through the consortium or the shared service, those of us that didn't have them, we put them in through BOCES, and we were getting back. Cambridge, we got about 58% back. They gave us $25,000 to pay for the local share, so we got the distance learning rooms put in basically for free. So what I keep trying to do is chase the money. My business manager says she likes to catch it, but I chase wherever the state says they're going to give us money, and I spend it in that direction, and then turn it around the next year. I don't let it sit there. If you leave your money sit, you're in trouble. We've tried to, there are three major sources for revenue. The other one is your fund balance. The last several years, we've put quite a chunk of our fund balance into our budgets to make it balance. But because of everything we've been able to do, we've been able to return at least 50% of our fund balance each year. So we've had $800,000 last year. We actually were able to put back about $600,000, so we were about two-thirds. We were lucky. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's great. Actually, so much of this is intertwined. You have an educational plan, but unless you have the financial plan to be able to back it and get things done. And what you're hearing is all school districts in New York have struggled mightily at the same time. And then there are innovative ways to deal with some of these things, but it's really obviously a lot of work now. Andy, in your context, tell us a little bit about what's been going on in terms of state funding and also what local funding.
We've been, as Vince said earlier, we've been crippled by the GEA.
Which is, you should
The
describe.
gap elimination adjustment. That was when then Governor Patterson, there was a state deficit in the budget. So they created the gap elimination adjustment, which is withholding monies from schools, from our state aid, to then pay off the deficit for the state. Last year, we were withheld $590,000 from the gap elimination adjustment, which doesn't sound like a great deal of money, but for Hartford, in order for me to recoup that money on our tax levy, I would have had to raise the tax levy 16% to make up for that loss. My district, a 1% increase on the tax levy is $33,500, so it's no money at all. The other thing that's really crippled us that we haven't talked about yet financially is the quote-unquote 2% tax cap, which limits the percent increase that you can go out at. There's rarely a district that's actually at 2%. Last year, we started at 0.8% tax cap, so we were only going to look to increase taxes $27,000. So we had to, as Vince said, almost chase the money. The interesting dynamic with the tax cap is it goes down each year. So if we were at 0.8 last year, if we didn't do something drastic to try to increase our tax cap, the following year our tax cap could drop to 0.4% or 0.5%, or in the case of North Warren, 0%. You have to go out for a super majority for a 0.5% increase. So we increased a bond principal for a bus payment by $20,000, which increased our tax cap to 1.3%, which gave us an additional $7,000 in state aid, which really we didn't need, but it's future forecasting for this upcoming year, so hopefully we'll be at least at a 1% tax cap limit. We are a poor rural school. Our combined wealth ratio is 0.54%, as you were. With foundation aid frozen, we're not going to get any more foundation aid, so as Vince said, we chase the aid, and there's really only one way that you can increase your aid is through expense-driven funding and BOCES. And so anything that we can do, we're trying to do. We're maximizing our expense-driven aids. As Vince said, it's funny, you're laying off teachers and you're restricting academic programs, yet you're buying more technology, and you're buying more textbooks, and you're buying more software, because by doing that, the state will give you more money, so the following year you might be able to rehire those teachers back. So everything that we're doing, we're running through BOCES, we're looking at installing solar panels within the year, we have an alternative energy plan, so any way that we can try and save on expenses, we are, but then taking that savings and then running them through BOCES so that we can get aid the following year.
This is even though there's some technical terms being used, I think you can hear the general themes and patterns here. It's really a struggle. Also, a couple of times you heard reference to the combined wealth ratio, which is a measure really of wealth in the district. Each district, of the 700 districts in New York, they each are given a combined wealth ratio. And in the old days, you go back a long time ago, wealth was regarded as property. What was the value of your property? And if you were a district that had a lot of had property wealth, you were regarded as wealthy. Well, in modern times, actually, people realize that, well, that might be partially true, but obviously the income of households was also very important. So the way they combine the wealth ratios, and 50% of the total comes of the calculation comes from the average income in the school district, and the other half comes from the property value. When you hear the state average for a combined wealth ratio is average will be 1.0. What you're hearing here is 0.5, 0.7. That means all these districts are below average in terms of wealth. Now, supposedly, state aid is supposed to level up and increase for districts that are poorer, but as you're also hearing, that's not what's going on at the moment for a variety of reasons. So let's talk a little bit, now, Andy, this was the start. Tell us a little bit about your public and not only their support for education, but also how they're reacting to the Common Core, what are the issues locally. Just talk to us a little bit about your public.
In Hartford, the school is the hub of the community. So we have community members in and out of the district at all hours of the day and throughout the weekend. And for the most part, in my experiences, the community's been very supportive of the schools. They've been very supportive the past few years with their budget. We haven't had a great deal of pushback from the Common Core. There's been a small group of parents that have come to a couple board meetings to express concerns with Common Core. I've met with them separately, and as we talked about, one of the first questions, a lot of their concerns with the Common Core, they had them intertwined with APPR, and so it was really just providing the correct information. We had a small number of, I refuse to call them opt-outs because there's no such thing as an opt-out. We had a small number of refusals last year through the 3 through 8, but we were still able to meet the participation threshold for the state. Although I am concerned this year moving forward that number is going to grow. In the early elementary grades, we have some more well-versed parents in the Common Core language that are adamantly against it, so I can see them refusing to have their students take the test. But all in all, we have a very supportive community. We just completed a building project a few years ago. They were overwhelmingly supportive of that. They were overwhelmingly supportive of the district, and they recognize our teachers' efforts.
Actually, I'm probably mixing this up. I'm so interested in the answers, I'm not following my protocol. But let me go this way. Vince, tell us a little bit about the public mood in Cambridge.
We've been very similar. We've been very similar with Andy. Very few individuals refused to take the exam. A little more last year. But Greenwich had an awful large number of opt-outs, so we're not sure if that movement's going to come down to Cambridge or what. But it seems to be a growing faction. There was probably the entertainment at our board meeting for the last couple of years was me and the board. So there weren't many people that came and complained about anything other than that. But I think the community overwhelmingly is supportive. Probably the biggest controversial thing that's happened in the community is the veterans exemption. A group of individuals came in and pushed to have some sort of an exemption for the veterans. And we were one of the few that gave something to them. And we lucked out because we guesstimated it to be about 7.7% shift to the other taxpayers. And it's exactly what it came out to be. And they have a tendency to want to push for more, but I'm kind of lucky because the guy that I followed, Dan Severson, was a war hero, and he's fighting them. So his comment basically is that since we did give something, maybe you should go after the other schools that haven't given anything. So fair warning. So, but from the standpoint of education, they've been very supportive. Like I said, they've always been very high in the Albany Business Review, and we can point directly to the loss in the GEA and the fact that we've had to lose staff, why we dropped in our rankings this year. We've made several movements already. The Board of Education hired an extra math teacher, and we reassigned the individual, so they're taking all the right moves to address whatever the problems or the concerns are, and I think the community is very supportive. We lost one budget by 6 votes since I've been there, and 19 staff members didn't vote. So we've been on their case to make sure that they all vote and have a budget. So,
Can you tell us about the public in Hudson Falls?
I found the public to be very supportive of the schools. Schools are, like Ian said, center of the community. Activity going on all the time. We try to support even summer activity. We run a regional summer school program. Our 21st Century Grant has allowed students to be engaged for 6 weeks daily on not only at a level of academics, but also a lot of team building and soft skills for our 9th and 10th graders. So, but again, grant driven. Mr. Duty has been very successful in having our budget pass. We find our faculty and staff are very supportive of making sure they get out there and vote. That's very important to do that. And I think Hudson Falls has a very hometown feel to it. We have our issues. We certainly have seen an increase in social emotional issues within students and families. I think the tough economic times has taken its toll. Just making ends meet. So the school really does try to meet the needs of the students and the families through many outreach programs and connecting resources to families. So it's been, like, we need to be very supportive.
Very interesting. Okay, so let's look ahead. Maybe this was pretty at the start, so obviously the governor, the legislature, the state education department have been very busy for many years in creating policies and requirements to fix you, right? Yeah, and they have their ideas about how the schools are to improve, and obviously it's been very activist in terms of the way they've been dealing with the local school districts. As you look ahead, what do you anticipate? The legislative session will be starting after the first of the year. The governor has his plans, so does the commissioner. What do you anticipate? What do you foresee in the near future in terms of what might be coming, if anything, from SED or from the state?
No, they're hanging on to the Common Core. So it will continue to be a shelf with that. I don't know, the public has stood up a bit across the state to kind of really, to at least share their view that we're over-testing kids and that has a negative impact on education, and not a lot of time is being utilized that is for assessment and not instruction. So I'm not sure if they're going to continue to push that. I believe they will. They're looking to the changes that they're making are so fast that it's hard for us to even keep up with them and to do it right. I wish they had more of a practitioner's view on how to implement plans. We are a focus district, so we are required to go to many additional trainings, and it's at times can be very confusing because the expectation from the state is at a high level, but as you reach back and say, okay, now I need help with this, that doesn't always a lot of follow through with that. So we're working on different pathways for students to graduate, so we'll have to look at that more career-driven pathway. So
That's what you anticipate.
I do anticipate that.
So, Vince,
Said we're here to have a conversation.
yeah,
Are we gonna start talking soon?
we are. We'll let this was the last question. I was going to open it up.
I think the multiple pathways is going to be the big push in the future. They've had to do something with everything that they've been going and pushing in a certain direction. I would have to say that with all the pushback that the commissioner got, I can't fathom that they would have been going further and doing more with Common Core, but maybe when they took a step back and funded, I'm just thankful that they weren't pushing more of that. But the multiple pathways, I think, are a big solution, the answer to help some of the students get through education.
Maybe what do you foresee in the near future?
I don't think I have anything different. I think the multiple pathways conversation is going to be a big one.
Would you want to explain it just a little bit for those who might not?
Sure. The multiple pathways is currently, in order to graduate, you have to have you have to pass the 5 Regents examinations. And so the state has, the Board of Regents has been having conversations about substituting one of the Regents exam for some sort of other credential, whether it be a CTE certificate or a career component, something along those lines, which isn't, they're moving too slow in that regard, but at least it's a first step to get there. I think for me, with the legislature, anytime when we meet with our representatives, it's all about funding and getting rid of that GEA. And if we can't get rid of the GEA or make a significant dent in it this year, I don't think we'll ever get rid of it.
Okay. So, let's open it up. Sir, first question.
Yeah, I've heard this tales of woe from all of you, we've all experienced it. As a group, as a focused, consistent, consolidated voice, I don't ever hear that from the superintendents. I've heard individual voices from Warriors. I've heard Saratoga School Board, their problems with what's going on, but I have not heard pushback, organized pushback from superintendents across New York State. I've heard some stuff on Long Island from the principal group. Why is there not a consistent message going after these political leaders who are beating up schools, beating up teachers, and in essence beating up the kids around New York State, especially the kids in these high needs districts where many of us work?
I would,
Go ahead. Whoever take.
my first comment to that is the biggest problem is anybody down in Long Island, New York City, or the big 5 schools are not concerned with GEA. It hit the upstate schools a hell of a lot harder than everybody else. In this case, well, it drives me absolutely crazy because I'm not political, but I agree with you 100%. You'll never hear a one voice from New York State. We've,
What about the BOCES?
well, BOCES, we've just hired an advocate, yeah, allowed to do our lobbying, so they're going to speak for one voice. What we've had is an issue, I think, and maybe it's been beneficial for Cambridge because we got the extra money, but when I would meet with Betty Little and beat her up, it wasn't helping Hartford. So, and we had the same problems. Now what we'll have is one person speak for the entire 31 BOCES, and that, I think, will start to show more power, clout, because there are other BOCES that are starting to look at the same sample, and hopefully we'll have lobbyists from every one of the BOCES going after it. But the biggest problem is the simple fact that Long Island and New York City, they really don't care about GEA because they're not affected by it at all. They want the foundation aid. Foundation aid would be nice too, but of the 3, we've lost $6.3 million just in GEA over the last 5 years. So that's much more important than my foundation aid.
Anybody else want to add?
I would say that regionally, we have, Hudson Falls has teamed up with a number of districts to bring Rick Timms in to talk to parents and faculty, staff, and communities about the budget situation. We've had regional meetings at Queensberry, certainly South Glens Falls, Queensberry, Hudson Falls, try to do common things so that our voice is heard collectively. We've had joint parent meetings. So I think what Vince has said with Betty Little, that there are superintendents that meet with her and try to voice a common thread that, you know, go down and help us and support us and be an advocate for us. But I think the move to hire an advocate so that that voice holds a lot of weight will help support that type of initiative to let all 31 districts' voices be heard.
Part of the issue too, I think, is everybody got hit at a different rate. We got crushed in 2010-11, and I don't think anybody else got hit back that early. And that's the problem. They were picking us off one at a time. So when I'm in the group with 31 superintendents telling everybody how bad it is, everybody's just shaking their head saying, God, I'm glad it's not me. And I was hanging out there on the branch by myself. Now everybody's starting to hurt. We, in order to survive, we had to cut over 20% of our staff. That's huge. And and we still haven't replaced 23 instructional teachers. So, and I say instructional staff, I don't want it to be a teaching assistant. I want you to know that it is a teacher that we're missing. Right? And I don't mean to cut Andy off, but it's the hardest thing when they try to say, we're going to cut 8 equally across the board to every district. It never happens. There are districts that get hurt worse than others. And that's why you'll never hear one voice. And in this, it's just like NICET. I'm sorry, I was a teacher and president of the union, chief negotiator for years. And NICET always supported the incumbent, even if they hurt us. And I would go nuts when we go to the conventions. Why are we doing it? Well, the devil known is better than the devil unknown. I don't agree philosophically with that. But we're quantum.
I don't think, I mean, the biggest thing, the only other thing to add, and Benny Little and Senator Marciano talk about all the time, is the power of the legislature is held in the city. And the city completely can outvote upstate New York, and their problems in the city are vastly different than our problems. And it's such a small thing too, but Tony Jordan's seat's been sitting open for how long? And that's another vote that upstate's lost. So unfortunately, you know, as a group, we do advocate together, but as a statewide organization, and the legislature agrees, the differences between downstate and upstate, and even the Big Five, are so vastly different that it's hard to come together on a single purpose.
We have time for another question. Somebody have a question for him? Sir.
I'm Mark, was sort of a brain, you said that.
Are you social studies?
I am. I'm curious, as you talk a lot about different grants, do the big districts have people who work just on writing grants in the district? I know Amy has gotten some for us at Hartford, you know, DL, and some other things, but do big districts have people who specifically a part of their job is grant writing, municipals, and changes in English that might be bringing more money to those districts that the smaller districts are not having access to?
It's a possibility.
Some districts, yes, and a lot of times too, the governor is a huge fan of competitive grants. And the problem with these competitive grants is they put stipulations into the regs that automatically eliminate districts from the start. So where there's a lot of grants that are out there, a lot of districts are
Session 1 is now over. This time, please proceed to session 2. Again, session 1 is ending. Please proceed to session 2. Thank you.
included. But yes, sometimes larger districts do, and there's also sometimes the services too, where there's grant writers, where you can hire grant writers to write the grants for you, and then part of their fee is then rolled over into the grant payment.
I do grants in our district, but we do also collaborate. We collaborated with St. Anne's Institute, and they were able to help support the grant writing, so I did it with someone else for the 21st Century grant. But sometimes BOCES can help us with grant writing service, and the collaboration between districts, having more people at the table, sometimes helps support a successful grant.
I tried to budget for a grant writer, and the board felt it was more important to do something else. I think it's an investment.
Well, we're at the end of our hour of it. Hopefully you learned a lot. I did. And enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
It's a good life.